Welcome back to Southwest Yard and Garden. I'm John White. Today we're going to be looking at a small garden, and with a lot of the new homes nowadays we have lots that are very small. It's hard to work with because you're working with very small space, and today we're going to be looking at a garden that helps to utilize as much space as possible and give you maximum productivity. So this garden belongs to David and Susan Elsie here in Las Cruces. And it's a garden that has a lot of vegetables and herbs in it, and mixed in with it is some fruit trees. So it's a garden that really is utilizing the most space available to it. And what we're going to do is walk through the garden and talk about some of the good points and point out where maybe there's some problems existing, so you can kind of get an idea and maybe some ideas as far as what you can do with your personal piece of property. So let's take a look at the garden. Okay, here we have a bed of strawberries, makes a nice ground cover. These are a spring-bearing variety. If I change things out, I'd probably change them to an ever-bearing. That way you get more production off of that small area. They are pretty thick, so they probably could go in and thin and transplant some out, enlarge the bed. We do have a tiered bed, so that we have the strawberries down low, and then we have some ornamental shrubs up on top, and so that gives us another good use of the area. And all these plants are dwarf type plant material, the dwarf oleanders, so they aren't going to get real large, so you've got good size there. He has poured a concrete border wall here that helps separate the Bermuda grass from your beds, because Bermuda is a very invasive grass, so keeping that like that helps to keep Bermuda out of the beds. So as we move on down the bed here, we can see the strawberries, and we'll move on into the vegetable area. Here's a tomatillo, or a husk tomato, and these are quite popular in some of the southern gardens. You can see why it's called husk tomato. It has a little protective almost like a leaf material, a husk that goes around the actual edible part, and this is very much like the tomato you eat. It's used a lot in salsas and used in different dishes, so it's a plant that grows quite well. You can see the height on it. One thing about this particular garden, the height on this husk tomato is almost dwarfing out the peach tree that's back behind it. So next year, this, with the height of it, might be something you want to put more towards the back of the garden rather than the front of the garden. But very productive plant, something that people ought to maybe be looking at for their gardens. Also, we have some squash down in front, and off to the side we also have some squash going in the garden. So as we move on down, we'll see there's some eggplant also started, and then we have some tomatoes, both cherry tomato and some Roma pasta type tomato. So this is kind of what you can see in this part of the garden. Here we are in the herb garden area, and you can see that we have a lot of different herbs in here, starting with some parsley in the back here. Herbs do real good in small space gardens because they don't take up very much space, and you get a lot of production off of a small area, so it doesn't take very many herbs to give you a lot of yield. Here's some sage. It's doing quite well, you can see. We have some rosemary down in front, and some oregano off to the side here, and then some mints off here. And again, this area is all irrigated well, so everything's doing quite well in here. So you have quite a pick of spices and herbs here in this one area, so that's a good use of the area. Up here we have some okra, and okra can be a fairly large plant, so you want to give okra plenty of room to grow because it gets tall and needs lots of space. This particular one is the spineless okra. If you've ever worked with okra much and you get the types that have the spines on them, your skin breaks out because of all the little prickles on the spine, so this is a good one to use. So stay with the spineless. You can see the okra that's starting to come on. This is about the size we want to pick it. We don't want it to get very much more growth on it, otherwise it gets quite woody. These produce on a pretty regular basis, so you need to come out daily or every other day and make sure you get a harvest off of them. And if they get too big, be sure and pick them and get rid of them anyway. But you know, beautiful blooms on it, so it has some ornamental characteristics as well as giving you good production on it. Here's some watermelon, and watermelon in a small garden probably is not one of the things you want to plant. Here it's kind of used as a ground cover, but watermelon does take up a lot of space in a garden, so you want to be careful of some of the plants that take a lot of space if you have limited space. There are some bush type cucumbers and stuff that can be used very well in the garden instead of maybe this kind of situation. We have some beans on the back wall that are growing up the trellis material there, where we have a lot of peppers, a lot of bell peppers in the garden. As you can see, we have some fruit trees intermixed here, and so that's a good use of height with the trees above the vegetables, and then some more tomatoes, and then some grapes on the back fencing. So that kind of helps to complete the planning here for this small garden, but hopefully it's giving you some ideas. Again, we're just talking about an area that's about 4 feet wide, and so we got a lot of production off a very small space. So again, hopefully it's giving you some ideas what you can do if you're in a limited space situation.